Think we're live right now. Good morning, everyone. Hello and welcome. This is Ramola D of Ramola D Reports. I'm here again this morning with Dr. Eric Carlstorm, my colleague, as we strive to understand what is going on with the whole program of targeting. So I'm going to have to take just a minute to cut down the feedback here. So I'm back again, pardon me. So Dr. Eric Carlstorm, as you know, is an emeritus professor. He's a professor of geography, physical geography, and environmental geography from California State University. He's also worked at various other universities. And since his retirement, he's been working as a researcher on various topics, including the World Trade Center, 9/11 catastrophe, the climate change and global warming issues, as well as global targeting, the global GISTAPO that we are talking about today, and organized stalking and torture programs that have been unleashed on civilians around the world. And one of the things we've been doing in this series of conversations is striving to uncover who exactly is doing it, who is behind it, why are they doing it, what exactly is going on, what kind of weaponology and technologies are being used, how it's being hidden under surveillance and military experimentation projects, etc., etc. So welcome, Eric. And I guess today our subject is going to be the weaponization of society.
Yeah, this is a most remarkable subject, Ramola, and thank you so much for joining me. And you know, you're working 200%, I know, and you have a global view of what's going on. So you're a tremendous asset. You know, they may have us on some terrorist watch lists, but I regard us as freedom fighters. You know, one man's
Most
terrorist,
definitely.
another man's freedom fighter. You know, and that's ever been thus. So we're dealing with very slippery use of language, and I know your background is, you know, teaching English and poetry, so you're very much aware of those nuances and those corruptions of language. But you know, let's start out. I've got one of my posts on gang stalking mind control cults.com, which is a website I've worked over the last 3 years after realizing that I was being targeted, largely as self-defense and helping others defend themselves from this huge program that we're starting to understand now. And one of the kind of little word games I've played is to try to find an acronym which is better than gang stalking.
Yes.
Now, the good thing about gang stalking is it can be a noun and a verb. Okay, you know, I was gang stalked, and you know, or whatever, you know, the different parts of speech better than I do. And most of my acronyms can't do that. So we're kind of stuck with this lousy word, but I've got a new one now that has replaced, at least in my website, Gog's new GISTAPO, and my new one. Let me just run this by you, see if you like it.
Oh, this is something else, not Gog's new GISTAPO?
I've got a new one. Tell me if you think it's a contender. It's GISTAPO 666, or you could say it So
Great.
6 T's, 6 P's. So it could be written GISTAPO with S to the 6, T to the 6, and P to the 6, or GISTAPO 666. It is a satanic system, and then this would stand for, if I can find it here, global intelligence. See, they sometimes call it counterintelligence stalking, but there's no difference between counterterrorism and terrorism. There's no difference between counter subversion and subversion. So I just call it global intelligence syndicate, and that brings in the mafia, satanic, space-based security, surveillance, stalking. Okay, there's the 6 S's: tracking, targeting, torture, terrorism, termination, transhumanism, okay, there's the 6 T's, and Pentagon, policing for profit, psychopolitical, psychotronic, psychological operations. Okay, now that's the 6
P's.
So
that's pretty brilliant. I really like it, you know, and I think if we spell it out and you've got all the superscript, the numbers, the raised to the power of 6, etc., people are going to get it, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, we're still trying to define this thing, and it is a remarkably huge system, and we notice that none of our politicians are talking about it. Trump's talking about make America great again and all this stuff. And hey, unemployment's down to 3.7%, the lowest since the 1960s. Well, guess why? You have huge segments of society that are being paid as what Mark Rich calls civilian war fighters. So you and I are up against civilians who have taken on the roles of civilian surveillance role players and crisis actors and spotters and trackers and all kinds of things, pointing their cell phones at you to get a fix on your location. And all this is feeding into the geographic information grid, satellite-based, and the computer system, the C4ISR, by which is hooked up to these supercomputers, by which they can organize these battle swarms or of nodes, which is other human beings, to attack the targeted individual. And so maybe what we should do, what I'd like to do, hopefully, Ramola, is talk about how and why our neighbors got enlisted into this satanic, completely evil and completely criminal system. We're looking now at the militarization, the weaponization, the criminalization, and the satanization of the entire society and the entire world, as our neighbors and our police departments and whatnot sign on to these policing for profit, community oriented policing, whatever programs. And we
absolutely. And I think that's a great way to do it, Eric, to kind of start to talk about what's happening with the neighbors, how that's connected to the economics of it, because there's money involved. Money's changing hands here, and how it's changing hands is very interesting, because a lot of these people, from some of the whistleblowing that we've gotten from actual stalkers speaking to people, we've learned that people are being paid with gift cards, they're being paid with car payments, house payments. Some people are being permitted to take their bills for their houses, which is their mortgages, and for their cars, whether it's a rental or a lease or, an outright buying of their cars, to send through loans, to take those loan bills over and get it paid by people like InfraGard or the fusion centers. And we have whistleblowing now from former law enforcement who have stepped forward to say that the local fusion centers are being used as command centers for gang stalking, for organized stalking. So think about the corruption of this. Think about the absolute criminality of this. This is not legitimate surveillance. This is not legitimate surveillance of legitimate terrorist suspects. This is blanket, outright takeover of communities and neighborhoods.
And I think we can get more specific. Everything you said is correct. There's so many different threads that come together that show that our leaders, our military and political leaders, have been on board with this New World Order, one world government ever since World War II. Okay, so this is what they've been pushing in secret. And there's so many documents and testimonies by intelligence people to that effect. I can prove that in a second, but let me just say it now. So what we're dealing with is people who might be a thorn in the side of the New World Order, one world government, which is a satanic system and a complete totalitarian, fascist, socialist lockdown of humanity, which will involve genocide of at least 2 billion people and the enslavement of most of the rest. So nobody's going to like this system if it happens, except for those who lead it. And this has been the case all along. There's documentation that goes way back on this. But let's, this is a system then that can take out all opposition wherever, if this congressman's acting out, stalk him. Or if this, such as what happened with Norman Dodd when he was the chief research director of the Reese Committee back in the 50s, that was showing how the foundations, the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, had teamed up with the military, even in the 50s, and were using the social sciences against the American people. Okay, well, what happened to that investigation? It was derailed. He was stalked. He was terrorized. He was defamed. His reputation was ruined, and they had to stop the investigation. So this is how the New World Order, say, embedded as a shadow government within, certainly America, because the DoD Department of Defense plays a central role in all this with the with the technologies, the geographic information grid and the C4ISR systems, computer command and control, computer communication, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. This is how they organize all this, and with artificial intelligence hooked up.
Yes, at this point, it's supercomputing, artificial intelligence, and it's obviously the surveillance agencies are very involved in this as well.
They are
So
central, and they're of course executing the desires of the people who are at the top of this pyramid, the people that own the transnational banks, the transnational corporations, the 350 extended clan families, according to Russian General Petrov. I've got a bunch of his things loaded on my website, his lectures, where he just tells it like it is. There's nothing like an old general who's honest, because he had, even if he's coming from Russia or the Soviet Union, he says basically.
I'm sorry, can I stop you right there? What exactly has he brought forward? What is he talking about?
Well, I mean, I can quote him directly. I've got a bunch of these posts on my website queued up, as it turns out.
Great.
He says what's most important, and he's talking about a magazine article. What's most important is the existence of a third power recognized in this particular article. The third power set an ultimatum for all of humanity. The leaders of the prosperous countries set the task of saving the ecology. Well, I've got this natural climate change.org website that shows that the whole global warming thing is a fraud too. All of these psychological operations. This is Weltanschauungskrieg, worldview warfare, as the Nazis put it, which is a psychological warfare against the population with these huge lies. But the bottom line, he's saying that the evidence shows that there is a world mafia. They're heads of the transnational banks and transnational corporations. There are about 350 financial clan families in the world. They own about half the wealth of the world. And so you got 6,000 people on that side with half of the world's wealth, and now over 7 billion on the other side. So we outnumber them about a 1,000,000 to 1. And yet, because they have so many mandarins working for them in all these different capacities, and they fooled our neighbors into, thinking that we're the bad guys and creating this civil war. Essentially, we're in the second civil war in America now.
We are, and I'm glad you brought that up, because many people keep saying, oh, the civil war is approaching. It's about the race relations and the race riots that are going to be coming down the pike. And, all these contrived riots and protests, etc., that, we've seen the Soros-funded crowd.
Well, that's very real. These are the new Jacobins. They're pushing us to the kind of a Bolshevik revolution or French Revolution. Same template, same people, same satanic goals to genocide and destroy the society. So there's so many pressures on us right now. But the one that's not being talked about in the best media,
right,
is what we're talking about.
Yes, yeah. This civil war is also a civil war because indeed citizens have been turned against citizens. People have been turned against people in our own neighborhoods and in our own communities. And they've done it through this process of targeting or scapegoating.
Yeah, and this is really what I hope to investigate with you. I know you've got a lot of insight into what's actually happening. Why, how can our neighbors be so easily turned? Why are they psychologically programmed to obey authority to the extent that they're going to believe that you and I are terrorists or pedophiles or prostitutes or whatever storyline they feed them? Our neighbors are believing this stuff.
Well, I think the answer, right, but I think part of the answer is very simple, and that part has to do with just the badge and the uniform. It's when people coming to people's doorsteps and saying, this is the Massachusetts Fusion Center. You are required to come to a local InfraGard meeting because we are investigating a person in your neighborhood. How long has this person lived here? How long have you known her? When did they move here? What have they been doing? What have you observed? This is the FBI. Here's the badge, and you need to tell us more. These guys, everybody keels over, because still to this day in this country, and this, by the way, can be laid at the door of mainstream media. To this day in this country, people have this sort of awe and respect feeling for the FBI and for the police and for fusion centers. This is the problem.
People don't think for themselves. People have this blind obedience to authority, which the psychologist at Harvard, Stanley Milgram, proved in the Milgram experiment in the 1960s. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, absolutely. There were two experiments, I think. There was the prison guard experiment. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, I'm speaking of the one where there's three people in the experiment. One person is the authority figure with a white lab coat, and the next person is the person that the authority figure is speaking to, and who's really the subject. And then the third person is an actor. He's across a glass window, and he's got electrodes to his head. And
right, the torture experiment. Yes.
Torture experiment, yeah. Mm-hmm. And what it was found out was 65 to 90% of the people who are tested, the subjects, who are the ones who are being told by the authority figure to administer electric shocks to this other actor who is actually playing a role, but who is supposedly there's an experiment to show what negative reinforcement does to, performance. And so if he gets an answer wrong, then the authority figure says, okay, give him, 100 volts or whatever. And 90% of 65 to 90% of the subjects will administer electric shock up to the point of death.
Exactly.
They're told
in obedience. That's right. That was the Milgram's obedience experiment, I guess. It was in obedience to authorities, to the authority figure. So you see, this is the problem I have, because a lot of people, people who actually read critically, who read widely across the internet, and who know that there are problems with the FBI today, problems with the fusion centers today, those people are in the know. They understand that what you and I are talking about, are testifying to and speaking openly about, and many others, many other activists in the space, what we are speaking about is the truth. This is exactly what is going on in our societies today. Whereas that part of the population, and unfortunately, I think there is a large part of the population that is completely in the control of the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, CBS, NBC, all of those classic mainstream media outlets, which are simply spewing out garbage, lies, propaganda, omissions, and absolute outright distortions of the truth. And they're also pumping up the governmental agencies that are involved in these criminal behaviors and activities against citizens, such as the FBI. I know the FBI has recently, there's been a lot with the, the Congress, congressional hearings, etc., the Rosenstein, the Mueller investigations, etc. So the FBI has come into the spotlight quite a bit recently, and a lot more information has come out about the corruption in there, but not all the information, not all the information that you and I have. The information, for instance, that's in Ted Gunderson's affidavit, special agent in charge in Los Angeles, who's talked openly about the criminal harassment, surveillance, and gang stalking. By the way, he uses that word, gang stalking activities performed by the NSA, CIA, and FBI through various means. He includes the echelon systems, the satellite systems of the NSA in these activities. He includes the CIA. He includes satanic cults, drug cartels, mafias, all of them working in tandem with the FBI and CIA. Interlocked. Yes. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, it's almost one thing, because, the CIA mobbed up with the mob. As soon as they were formed back in 1947, they were working with the Sicilian mob, and because they felt they needed large infusions of funny money to get their agenda done, and because the mobsters would help them with their operations in Europe. They didn't want any leftist movement. So then this morphed into, the standing armies, the stay behind standing armies after World War II, Operation Gladio. So what we see is, if we look deep, and you and I have been forced to look deep, we would just rather watch, have a normal life, right?
Exactly. Saturday night movies, right?
Yeah, right. We just watch. Yeah, we want to just go on a picnic or take a walk or whatever.
Yeah.
We can't. We are forced to understand this system, our lives depend on it, and many others. So let me just go through the terms that Mark Ritz
and we become the whistleblowers, oddly enough. We become the whistleblowers about this program that's being carried out on thousands of people. Well, actually hundreds of thousands of people.
Actually, millions of people around the world. And
Possibly millions of people. Nobody can, actually fine-tune the number over here, and it's very hard to pinpoint the number.
I'm thinking 1% globally right now, but I think that can be scaled up or down depending on their needs. Mark Rich, let me just throw out these terms. He says this is a new war form.
Yes.
The ruling elite, the New World Order, has controlled the nations. Now they have to go after the individuals and have to target the individuals and groups that are standing in the way of the implementation of their one world government, which Constance Cumbey, who wrote 2 books about the New Age movement, and I can quote what she says, is all about establishing the Antichrist kingdom on earth. And it is organized, she says, by British intelligence. And it is organized along the lines of the Nazis. So,
very interesting.
And this lady's a lawyer, so very smart researcher, spent a lot of time working on the New Age movement. Well, this is one more way that you want to bring in this New World Luciferian religion.
May I know when she published her books and, what the books are? Perhaps our readers would be interested as well. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, she wrote in 1983. She wrote, let's see, she's got a couple books, The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow, and the other one is A Planned Deception, the Staging of the New Age Messiah. And see, there's so many tangents here, but let me just read a little bit about what she says. She says there's absolutely no way one can competently research the New Age movement and not discover that its major purpose is bringing in a new world order headed by the Antichrist. Okay, there's a pretty satanic agenda. She also says that the New Age movement is a British intelligence operation that employs psychotronic mind control techniques, hologram technology, and other products of modern research, and 2, is identical to Hitler's Nazism in its goals and modus operandi. Well, that makes sense, because we know that, Joseph Mengele and all these paperclip scientists, were flooded into the United States and Russia and other countries, South America, after World War II in Operation Paperclip, and kept the same mind control experiments going under the CIA auspices in America that were going under the Nazi auspices in the concentration camps, like at Dachau and the other ones. She says basically, she nails it, so there's many ways that we can move into understanding this. But this new war form then involves the cooperation of the military and the intelligence with the civil society. They call it civil military operations in the manuals. And
yes, and it filters down through the DHS, and we know the DHS and the whole construction and creation of the DHS is very connected to the Third Reich. I mean, it's like the embodiment of the Fourth Reich in our midst over here, with the homeland being
Homeland security, yes.
Right. And that's part of the horror of what's going on over here. You have these regional fusion centers that are now essentially domestic terrorism cells all around the country, using see something, say something, and the cover and the guise of counterterrorism, the involvement of, the people, the citizenry into the work of the extreme surveillance of these fusion centers through the see something, say something, which you'll see everywhere now. If you take a train, it's on, Amtrak. At the station, you'll see the ads. The bus stations, you'll see the ads. I'm sure at the airport, it's been a while since I've been to the airport, but I'm sure you'll see the ads there as well.
Or you can go to the local ice cream shop, and there's the National Guard has little job descriptions. Oh, you can work in counterterrorism, special computer network operations. Well, all these things are being deployed, against us.
Yes.
So I think young people, maybe with a high school degree, no college, you're looking for work. Hey, there's an employer. And so yes. I'm guessing that there are trillions of dollars being put into this global system now, and that young people are fed into it looking for work. I mean, they
Absolutely. I think that's right. I mean, I think on the one hand, you've got the public domain infrastructure of these agencies. The Department of Homeland Security is most certainly an employer. It has jobs for people, and it continues to have jobs. And I think, by the way, they also work, they go down, they do the job fairs at the universities. and the college campuses, because I've seen a little bit of that on YouTube. I've seen some videos. So they are recruiting, they recruit people into security, into cybersecurity and so forth. And as you say, kids coming out of college looking for a job, this becomes a career opportunity for them of interest, because it appears the security industry is thriving, right? Billions are being poured into it. So why wouldn't they go into it?
The national security enterprise. And here I have a great quote from Cooper, what's his name? Bill Cooper. Let me just read this quote. Again, to get the background, he says, and this guy was Office of Naval Intelligence, and he spills the beans towards, he was of course killed in his front yard for being too honest. So we run a risk doing what we're doing. Bill had a big following, but he had a radio show back in the 90s and was, really way decades ahead of everybody else. He was in Office of Naval Intelligence. He said he was able to see some documents, literally 2 or 3 file cabinets of documents called Operation Majority. And he found out what happened in Dallas and why. Basically, the documents said that the intelligence community felt that John F. Kennedy was a threat to national security, which translated actually means that they thought John F. Kennedy was a threat to the New World Order, which they were, and the one world government, which they had been actively pushing for. So our intelligence agencies have betrayed the American people in a treasonous manner since they were formed in 1947. So please do not look up to these people. All they do is lie and propagandize, and all the mind control experiments, out of the CIA. This is heinous. This is satanic. What they have done is deeply satanic. Anyway, he goes on to say, according to the documents he saw on the JFK assassination, we're understanding the world now, this assassination was ordered by the policy committee of the Bilderberg Group, which is really the top of the secret world government. It's carried out by agents of Division 5 of FBI, the Secret Service, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the Office of Naval Intelligence, of which he was a part. And then he tells you how it happens. He also tells you that you don't even get to the case officer stage of being in the Office of Naval Intelligence unless you were 32nd or 33rd degree Freemason.
Oh, well, right. You had to be a member of those secret societies, didn't you? To even rise up the ranks over there.
The 30th degree, they commit themselves to serving Lucifer. We are run by a satanic cult. Our intelligence agencies, the CIA, FBI, NSA, these are satanic cults. And they are bringing in a satanic one world government. And they have been doing it for all of my lifetime. I'm 69 and a little more. And certainly, ever since World War II, this has been the unpublicized agenda. And it's so easy to prove now. But let's go back to Mark Rich's to understand his terminology. MNF stands for the multinational force. Okay, there's no place a TI can go now. You're stuck where you go. And then it's another important term is the HCIN, Human Computer Intelligence Network, which again consists of the supercomputers with artificial intelligence that is equipped with sensors and directed energy weapons, which of course are sometimes called non-lethal weapons. These technologies coming out of DARPA, coming out of the military, coming out of intelligence. So we're finding out where this is coming from. And again, you have the global C4 ISR as a critical support structure for this modern tyranny, and this C4 ISR, command, control, communications, computer, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, is, conducting operations in real time. It's training citizens. It is attacking TIs. It is directing battle swarms against those TIs by taking the nodes on their computer screen, which is other human beings, and getting them to, operate these street theater, psychological attacks, etc., all with the goal of breaking the will of the TIs to resist. And this, of course, goes back to the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. And
absolutely, because the whole operation is psychological warfare. Because the whole purpose of stalking somebody, especially in really modalities with, groups of stalkers picking up and dropping off and new groups of stalkers moving in wherever the TI goes. That whole thing, the whole purpose of stalking somebody is to give a person a feeling of paranoia, of being watched, of being pursued everywhere, of being stalked, something that is a classic symptom in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Disorders, something that is designed when the TI verbalizes it, designed to take him straight to the psychiatrist, straight to the DSM, and a obviously fraudulent mental health diagnosis that the man is delusional or the woman is delusional, and therefore needs to be, knocked up with horrific antipsychotic medications, which essentially are psychotics, and will send you straight into the realm of brain damage.
Yeah, and this was all carried out under the Soviet Union. It's called the psychiatric reprisal. So these systems have developed in numerous countries because the New World Order controls numerous countries and plays us off against each other. And of course, there's always the fear and the threat of the great enemy, which is, again, the media holds that up, the government officials hold that up. But that is a way to control the real enemy of these nations, which has always been the domestic population. Which is the domestic population, which is us.
Which most of us never really knew. We all imagined that we lived in democracies, you see, where we had elected governments and we had people who actually were responsive to us. I think, as one grows older, one does indeed, and at this point in time, many of us, whatever age we are, have understood that our democracies are really petty shams. They're like cover operations. They are, and behind the cover operations, you've got the puppet government in place, and behind that, of course, now we're having a lot of whistleblowing about the shadow government here and the deep state over here in the US, and how that's really what's running things. And all of us, and you especially, Eric, and many others who've dug into this a little deeper, have, laid bare for us the big old pyramids behind that of, the elite bankers, the Federal Reserve, private racketeers, etc., who are essentially behind this and who apparently are behind the New World Order, right?
This is Mystery Babylon the Great. This is coming back from Egypt. This is a satanic system, which is, of course, feeds right into a fascist pyramid of a very small elite controlling the masses, through these cover stories, psychological operations. They're the holders of the knowledge, and that has to be kept from the rest of us. So secrets, the cryptocracy.
Secrets are behind it, yeah.
This is Walter Boart's term, the cryptocracy, ruled by secrecy. And he wrote in 1972 or 4 or whatever, Operation Mind Control, the CIA plot against America, 1974. All this had come out at maybe 78. All of this had come out in the 70s.
This is shocking that the stuff has actually come out. It's in these books, and nobody knew because, of course, all of that has been considered fringe and conspiracy theory and, people imagining things and getting delusional. And that idea, of course, has been fostered and, pushed forward by mainstream media galore, in recent times.
We've been dumbed down. I taught at university for 30 years, and the general level, ambient level of student performance in 2011 was much lower. That's when I retired. Was much lower than when I started in 1981. That 30-year trend was downward.
Very interesting.
Not to say that our good students weren't still not good.
That's right, I agree with you. I mean, I'm not really doing an across-time kind of analysis right now, but it seems to me that most of the students, right, or maybe I can say across time, I've noticed most definitely the kids coming out of high school, coming to the college level, coming to a basic English composition class, very basic. They can't write a complete sentence properly.
Half the students.
Half the students, but
are not ready to do college English or college math when they become a freshman in college. In other words, what we have is we've extended the babysitting model right into the university.
That's correct. And I'll tell you, at the undergraduate level, that first freshman level, they're not engaging in critical thinking. You would think that your schooling would, lead you through expository writing and critical thinking, but no.
So these people make excellent perps, don't they? Tell them what to do, give them a cell phone, give them an app, just like out of Jason Bourne, here's the location, you go there, and we see so much of this technology in the movies.
We see who's wielding it. And, actually in our neighborhoods, as you say, the people who are becoming the perpetrators at the level of the community and the neighborhood, think about who they are. It looks to me that they are the retired people who possibly are the uneducated immigrant who's, taken care of his or her families, but has never had the opportunity themselves of being very educated. It's those retired people who are walking about, doing the color coding and using the cell phones on people.
Driving about, yeah.
Yeah, and driving about.
And retired military, retired police are perfect. I get
retired military, retired
a
police.
lot of people from Texas here in southern Colorado who they just fancy themselves as Texas Rangers out to get the head guy, and so a lot of these are retirees who are very easily coerced or fooled or convinced that this is a good way to spend their time. And
it's also the home improvement contractors who are already around the neighborhood in the daytime in their vans. So they apparently are sort of a very desirable demographic for the fusion centers to use. So because it seems to me, based on what Mark Rich is talking about, it appears to me as well, ever since the Jade Helm operations in 2015, when it became quite visible, there appears to be a military presence in the population as well, with the fake landscaping vans and the fake home contractor vans and the fake roofing vans. I mean, they are doing these things, no doubt. They're double agents. They're trained in roofing and, fixing your gas line or whatever, but they're also coming in and placing little microwave emitters in your house, perhaps, or they are doing something else in the neighborhood,
Well, think about the civil military operations, CMO, which is in all the, the military documents as a synonym, more or less, for this fourth generation war, this New World War that Mark Rich talks about. This means that military people can jump into the civilian sector and put on plain clothes.
That's what they're doing. They're most definitely doing that currently, and you see them everywhere. So you've got those guys, the military guys, and you've got the regular home improvement guys who've now been turned, so to speak, because now they're being given fabulous amounts of money to go in these car lines and engage in COINTELPRO actions against whichever target has the misfortune to enter that particular area or neighborhood. And then you've also got housewives, women who are working at home, who are suddenly being roped into this. So you see them in the malls, you see them in your neighborhoods. They are being roped into these activities of assault, which are well hidden, by the way. They're well hidden under government contracts. I don't know if we've talked about it, but I know I've talked about another podcast that there are social engineering and behavioral observation contracts, PSYOPs that is being whitewashed as an actual government contract, a study of public behavior, things like that. And under that aegis, people are now able to color code or jog in your face or run across you as a PSYOP, but be protected by their little contract, because you see, they're doing it as part of this wonderful contract to understand society. As my brother-in-law told me, is indeed the name of a contract run by the University of Leeds in London that he was participating in, not realizing he was becoming a gang stalker. He was asked to participate as a community participant in understanding society, whereas what he was doing was color coding, echo stalking, echo gesturing. I mean, he did it around me as well. And this is one of the reasons I had these conversations with him and found out about this program that he was participating.
You think this is your brother-in-law?
My brother-in-law, my English brother-in-law.
Let's assume that, to be in your family, he's pretty smart, but he's been duped, hasn't he?
Completely. Oh, he's extremely smart. He's a doctor with, several degrees and major work experience, etc. King's College in London, etc. So he's pretty brilliant. Exactly. And this man was so fooled and deceived by this program run by a university to draw communities in, we need you to participate in this project because we're trying to understand society as we move on to, understanding the brain. And, a doctor probably fell flat for that right away and said, oh, yes, let's help the community. Let's move life forward, not realizing that this is what it was. This is just nothing but simple, old-fashioned gang stalking people, engaging in COINTELPRO, engaging in harassment and abuse. without realizing it.
And data collection. Let's face it, they are collecting
And data
all
collection.
of the responses. It's like the TIs or the amoebas in the Petri dish, and they poke it here to see how it responds and poke it there to see how it responds. Map all of those responses on the supercomputers because they are social engineering, as you say. This is a way to control the society, and the targeted individuals are chosen often because they might represent a certain demographic, and so yeah, the people that are smart, extremely smart, like my family as well, with a bunch of PhDs, hey, they're into science. They are into learning.
Exactly.
That's the new God.
It's the new God. And these people who are so into science fail to understand the extreme politics that they are stuck in, and how science has now been completely taken over by politics.
And Satanism, if you look at it deeply.
Well, it's probably Satanist politics. Yeah, that's behind it all.
Let me give a few more of these terms just to get this cemented in our framework here. This is from Mark Rich's book and his interviews, which I've got on my website. The multinational force, I said the MNF. Okay, so now we have a term for that. The Human Computer Intelligence Network, HCIN. Okay, that's what's happening with the supercomputer. The AI, the DEW, the Global C4ISR, the PSYOP and tactical PSYOP units that actually are coming out of the military, that also involve universities in the civilian sector to study and profile the targeted individuals. Again, data collection. We want behavioral and mental control over the society. We're going to get mental and behavioral control over individuals. Well, this is what the CIA's MK Ultra mind control programs were all about. This is what the Nazis were doing with their marionette program. This is what the Monarch programming of the military is about. Back in the 50s and 60s, which was exposed in the church committees in the 70s. And people like Russ Dizdar think that there are now something like 10 million satanic super soldiers, people whose minds have been controlled, who are essentially biorobots. They are weapons platforms in the United States alone, and 100 million in the world. Okay, that's Russ Dizdar. He's written this book called The Black Awakening. And again, it comes back to this, bringing in the kingdom of the Antichrist. They're fooling a lot of us, but that seems to be the goal. So what happens if we have 10 million people in the United States who are very easily ordered around because their personalities have been fragmented deliberately? And so they might have a whole suite of personalities. You can be triggered from one to the next with an amnesia barrier in between, like Sirhan Sirhan, who was the patsy of the assassination of Robert Kennedy. And Lee Harvey Oswald, who was the patsy of the JFK assassination. Now, Milton Klein, the psychologist, said in 1957, and he was a hypnotist, I can make a patsy in 3 months. I can make an assassin in 6 months. Okay, this was in John Mark's book, The Search for the
I read that. Yes, in the 70s. This was back in the 70s.
Back in the 70s. So, and now this, since the 60s, even before the Kennedy assassination, they have had radio hypnotic intracerebral control, where they can use radio waves to hypnotize, to
literally hypnotize,
into different subalters.
Yeah.
And then they have electronic dissolution of memory, EDIM, to make sure they don't remember these events.
Exactly. So the little men in black, little weapons to remove memory are not that far off, because at this point, from everything we read and learn, it appears that the wiping out of memory, the wiping out of different parts of the brain, is entirely possible through the use of radio frequency weapons.
Russia, the Leda machine, they've been doing this since the 80s, and they call it information warfare. They're going to take certain information out of the human brain and insert other information in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's propaganda in its most invasive and extreme form.
It is. And as we noticed from the James Giordano lecture, and from others, by the way, check out Jonathan Moreno's websites. He's written a lot of great books, but he also speaks about neuroethics in much the same way of speaking that James Giordano does. That now, it's a kind of a way that takes for granted the use of the human brain as a weapon by the military, takes for granted that step, and then goes on and says, but there are some issues of moral agency and latitude that we need to be looking at in terms of neuroethics. But you can't take as your premise that the brain can be invaded and the brain can be modified, which is a military premise. So how is it neuroethical for a neuroethicist to take that as a premise, would be my primary question, which is why all of these neuroethics departments in universities need to be questioned. What are they basing and premising their concerns on?
Well, as an excellent point, my gut level, Ramola, to address that is that the U.S. military, with $800 billion a year, budget, which is, more than the next 10 nations combined and has been throughout most of our lives, regards if they've declared war on this country or this group or this individual, they assume that person's dead. So therefore, why not experiment and get some good science?
Oh, God. So they see us all as dead, so why not experiment on us anyway?
Declared warfare on us. You see, that's the...
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, that's pretty frightening, actually. That's ghastly.
Well, let's look what happened in, I think it was one of the YouTubes I've got on my website shows a young lieutenant making a proposal in the Pentagon, that they would put they would fly a virus over the skies of Baghdad. And then this virus would be the vector then through which Funvax, the
Funvax video.
Right. And the idea is that, okay, there's a gene in the...
It wipes out the God gene, right?
That wipes out the God gene. These pesky fundamentalist Muslims, we're going to actually change their minds. And it's okay for us to do that because we're at war with them and they're already dead meat. So let's get some good science out of it. Now, can you see the arrogance of this? I mean, this
extreme hubris. Beyond.
And if there's one thing I've learned in all this study is those who play God become devils. And that it describes our intelligence units, our intelligence.
Absolutely.
They've taken upon themselves that role. They have become human devils. I mean, that's an extreme.
That's absolutely correct. They have gone off the rails here. They're totally out of control. When there are no bounds and boundaries, and this is the thing, this is something I've written about before in regards to the CIA, in regards to Barbara Hartwell's information that she's often brought out in her podcast with me, that once you do not have boundaries, you do not have bounds, you do not have limits, then you don't have any morality, you don't have any scruples, There's nothing to stop you. And that appears to be what some of these experimenters in the military and the intelligence agencies have done. They have set no bounds for themselves. So, and that's the signs. You see, this is the problem with science today. The science today that we are seeing reported even in mainstream media. The science that is now talking about artificial intelligence, about machine life, machine learning, robots having life, and what's the definition of life therefore, and all of those questions that are coming up. All of that is being premised on this understanding that it's okay to take science to the nth degree, where it's so harmful to everything. Harmful to life, harmful to humanity, when we've crossed all borders and boundaries of compassion, ethicality, basic normal common sense, and living in harmony with each other, you cross those bounds, and then you can't really call it science. It becomes very evil.
Absolutely well said. And so Mark Rich would say things like, well, entire societies have undergone a process of civil degeneration.
That's right. It's degeneracy.
Yeah, there's a degeneration going on here, that we could look in terms, almost in biblical terms, that, God's going to have to judge this society for, as he has done in the past, according to the Bible, by wiping them out. That's the whole story of the flood.
Oh, right. Yeah. I have a few issues with the God that, behaves and mentions.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want to get too sidetracked on that, but the idea. But anyway, so according to Mark Rich, the main goals of this covert program are to install and maintain a global government, negative eugenics, that would take out whoever you want, social control, and it's entertainment for the influential psychopaths at the top.
Apparently it is. Apparently these lunatics, not content with killing, death, and destruction, which they practice on a daily basis, they're engaging in snuff films and, porn and dark web, black entertainment, which involves killing, which involves murder, which involves extreme child abuse. And they do apparently find it entertaining. You have to wonder what on earth is going on. These people have crossed the boundaries of sanity, basic sanity.
Well, they've certainly crossed the boundaries of decency. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's the idea of a drug addiction. You know, a little bit at first, and then more and more and more, and it takes, you know, more and more to get the same hit that you got the first time. You know, so apparently this sexual degeneracy, pedophilia, is like that. You know,
Yes, it sounds like it.
yeah, you become more and more degraded and degenerate over time, and we're seeing this all kind of play out now in front of us. You know, with Harvey Weinstein, who, by the way, you know, paid people to stalk his
Right.
people that were, you know,
Exactly. He
that
simply
program.
jumped right into the gang stalking program because, hey, it's being done by the fusion centers. It's being done by the FBI. Why can't I do it? And so he had a lot of money and he went around stalking his girlfriends. And that was written up in the New Yorker as if it was some kind of unique, isolated thing. Because, of course, the New Yorker and the New York Times is still seeking to not not recognize the fact that stalking is going on in our midst today, gang stalking is going on in our midst today, and that, you know, fusion centers are responsible.
Well, that's what's so remarkable. I mean, we have this big play going on in Washington, D.C., you know, between the crazy Democrats who are like the new Jacobins and then now the, you know, the good, decent Republicans. Well, that's a complete flip-flop from when I was, you know, growing up. It was, you know, it was always the Republicans were the business party back in the, you know, 60s, 70s, and 80s who favored the 1%. And the Democrats at that point, you know, wanted a little bit of crumbs for the people. So I always voted Democrat because of that, you know. But now we've done this role reversal, which I'm sure
absolutely has I've noticed that too. Yes, yeah. I mean, the Democrats were always
decent guys, but you know, Donald Trump is a complete puppet of the neoconservatives. You know, Israel and world Jewry and the American, you know, Wall Street Jews, and just like his predecessors, Obama, Bush II, Clinton, all puppets of the neoconservatives. Which have given us our foreign policy.
That appears to be the truth, even though there are, you know, for instance, the video with Robert David Steele yesterday that you had sent me, where he speaks glowingly of, you know, of President Trump, whereas he talks about the Bushes and the Cheneys being involved in this massive, long-standing mafia operation against the American people. So
well, this is remarkable, and now we're starting to get like people like Robert David Steele, you know, and Bill Cooper making these incredible admissions, you know, because for years and years, no, you're crazy, and Bill Cooper talks about how in the 40s they already developed techniques to discredit whistleblowers by saying they're crazy, and so the stalking protocols certainly were being worked up back in the 40s here, and I'm sure they were developed in the Soviet Union during that very, very dark period, you know, after 1917, when so many millions were killed and sent to the Gulag. So, but here's what this guy Robert David Steele says, and it's a remarkable admission, but it's only a partial admission. He says, and he's written some memorandums to presidents that he quotes. Says the bottom line on 9/11 is that it was commercial insurance fraud dressed up as terrorism. Okay, here you got it.
That's pretty huge.
That's pretty huge. The CIA's guy's finally admitting. Now, I started my website, you know, over a decade ago. I wrote an article in 2002, more or less as a professor, full professor, proving that 9/11 had to be an inside job. And we're stonewalled. We were told we were crazy. We were stalked for doing that. But now we got an ex-CIA guy saying, hey, it was dressed up as terrorism. He says, we knew in 1988, 1989 that the Twin Towers were condemned, and Governor Pataki in New York and his counterpart in New Jersey made a deliberate decision to collaborate with Bush Cheney to plan for a future controlled demolition dressed up as terrorism that was forbidden by the EPA because of the asbestos and all the toxic chemicals and so forth. But then he says, oh, well, by the way, going back as far as Ronald Reagan, we've been in a state of unlaw, he says. We've been in a state where executive power and the use of the continuity of government, the super secret program within the intelligence community, Dick Cheney, he blames, basically created a shadow government. Dick Cheney's a medium level operative, using continuity of government, a super secret program, which I have been affiliated with in a very indirect way, he says. And he's basically been doing this, Cheney, been doing things illegally off the books. So let's blame Dick Cheney now. And so it's not just Barack Obama, it's also the two Bushes and Dick Cheney. Well, obviously, you know, if you've got this situation of a rogue government in a state of unlaw since 1980, certainly, you know, George H.W. Bush, one of the most fiendish people in the world, and he says this, Cooper says this, you know, I mean, this is most of our lives. We've been living under a shadow government, which is out of compliance with the law, that is running covert operations, running black budget operations against the American people, all the space-based programs, all the mind control programs, all the social engineering programs, all the foreign wars.
And it also presumes that, you know, because so many presidents have been a part of it, that across time, across a long period of time, across several decades, that the supragovernmental body is very much in charge, is kind of playing the American people, as you say, you know, just installing different governments, but continuing that continuity of government, which really sounds like the continuity of the war industry, you know, the war industry takeover of the world. And the continuation of terrorism that's wreaked not just on the American people, but also on other countries through war.
Yeah, and the reason I think it's important to go through this is to you know, let people know the depths of deception, which have, and these false flag operations, these cover stories, these psychological warfare operations, the worldview warfare. This helps you then understand what's going on now. If you don't understand the history of these deceptions, then you will continue to be deceived. But one of the articles that I've got posted here, I think it's the people behind gang stalking. Let's see. It says the USA, On Watch, and the Department of Justice work together to partner with the following. Now get this. Your local, yeah, this is the People Against Gang Stalking. It's just a video put out by a guy who's like us. He's trying to survive, trying to figure out what's going on. And you know, middle class, middle education level, but very motivated. So he says the USA, On Watch, and the Department of Justice work together to partner with the following: your local businesses, your supermarkets, and they may have community engagement agreements, schools and daycare centers, your church, communication companies, your cell phone companies, your doctor and hospitals, local government and neighborhood watch groups, citizen corps councils, local fire, EMS, and police are big, of course, parks and recreation, code enforcement, Department of Transportation, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Public Safety, Health and Human Services, local news outlets. Oh my God.
Those are the public-private.
Society.
That's everybody. That's public-private partnerships that takes over society. That's the takeover of society, you know. And at the level of the neighbors as well, you know, there are individual connections as well. And this is where the badge comes into play. Somebody showing up with a badge and saying, your neighbor is under investigation and you need to cooperate. You need to help us. And you cannot tell your neighbor that he or she is under investigation because here's a gag order, here's a fine, $10,000, 10 years in jail, etc. if you breathe a word about this. And this is what Gerald Sosby, you know, stands witness to. He talks about the federal magistrate judges producing these court orders, which permit the FBI to have that paper notification stating that somebody is under investigation. And he says the FBI pretty much is commandeering that operation. They're in charge of the FMJ. They're in charge of the DOJ, of the Department of Justice, even though it should be the other way around.
And then absolutely. And then he says, well, Infraguard and all these private security corporations, which are making big bucks in the national security establishment or national security enterprise, and they have connections with all the Fortune 500 companies. Okay, so that pulls us right back into the level then of the global mafia, these Fortune 500 companies who are owned by these, you know, 6,000 people, these 350 plus clan families. So there's kind of the hierarchy, you know, kind of laid out, you know, and of course.
Can I just ask you about that connection between the global, the 500, the Fortune 500 companies and the local communities? What is the connection there?
Well, the connection is Infraguard and these private security corporations are corporations. They are private security firms that are connected with these Fortune 500 companies. So same people will sit on the board of directors. And of course, there's a pipeline the people that run InfraGard are ex-FBI and ex-CIA.
Okay, so that's the connection. The private security corporations that engage in these contracts with the fusion centers are actually linked via corporate association to and board association to the Fortune 500 companies. So in this way, the Fortune 500 companies, the very small number of high, income yielding companies are, or revenue generating companies through whatever means, are connected at the level of the security companies and the fusion center to this program, to the gang stalking program.
So we have now redefined all of society, reorganized it. And one must ask, I think, is this reorganization concomitant with the reorganization of society that was outlined in Agenda 21, which was, the United Nations would have the, kind of control of resources and human activities. We'd have a new political and economic system for the 21st century. Agenda 21 is the agenda for the 21st century. So my guess is that, yes, these things are very well connected, and that local Agenda 21 feeds in directly with this system in the sense that now we have these public-private partnerships which now supplant the traditional means by which citizens would actually have a say in their in their own affairs at the county, state, and federal level. But now we've got all these ICLEI and whereby these psychologists come into the community and they kind of maneuver people into a consensus view that, of course, they had decided earlier.
The Delphi problem solution.
Yes,
thingy.
the Delphi technique, which comes out of the Rand Corporation, which again goes right back to the 1950s Reese Commission, Norman Dodd trying to, where did the PSYOPs come from? Well, they come from the Rand Corporation, the CFR, the Carnegie Ford Foundation.
Yes, and that's where the policy, you see, that's the policy creation, and it trickles down through the ICLEI and to the city council. So you see now the city councils, the local governments are all completely tools and pawns of the system. I mean, 3 minutes before a city council is what people are being allowed to give information on. And then nothing is done, or very rarely things are done. I still think city councils are good places to, go and present information and demand change, etc. But at the same time, they don't listen, they etc. So things don't change. I hope things do change. For instance, as far as I look at places like, the InPower movement, which is doing a lot about taking back our power. That's their logo, their slogan, take back your power. And they are putting out a lot of information currently on 5G and how it's literally at the level of the, city council and local government that one can engage in attempting to execute change by giving those people, the council members, information about how bad and deleterious 5G can be for all of us in communities, in our communities, because 5G is it's a surveillance technology takeover. And that's the other side of this I wanted to just mention, Eric. It's not just gang stalking or organized stalking. It's not just stalking and tracking people. It's not just video surveillance and audio surveillance. It is surveillance, electronic surveillance with undisclosed surveillance technology, which includes anti-personnel directed energy weapons. And as we know, the Department of Justice has made agreements with the Department of Defense to use anti-personnel weapons that the DoD produces and manufactures and creates. And so those weapons, we're talking about microwave weapons, we're talking about active denial, heat producing thermal weapons, infrared weapons, millimeter wave weapons, X-ray weapons with X-ray vans. These are being used by police departments. These are being used by EMS. People in the EMS world, the fire guys, the emergency guys, they are holding licenses, FCC licenses for through-wall surveillance. Why would they need it? Except in a case of, a fire or an earthquake. But what a lot of people in communities are reporting is they're being stalked by people using fire engines and fire trucks, using police cars and police vans, using ambulances, that's EMS, using the ambulances. People are being stalked, even school buses. So that's all part of this stalking phenomenon. You've got every part or element of our society being roped in to this ghastly program where people are being stalked and people are being hit with through-wall surveillance radar weapons and other kinds of weapons, non-ionizing radiation weapons, Of course, I think X-rays, you're entering the world, X-rays, gamma rays, you're entering the world of ionizing radiation over there. So those are being carried in vans. There was a big article about the NYPD having vans with the X-ray machines in them, supposedly to find out what's inside trucks and vans, but they're also being directed at houses. So, and they could be directed at people.
Yeah, so there's this gigantic, great big lie at the heart of this whole thing, which is that, get on board with us and we'll give you some money and we'll give you some perks and we'll get those terrorists, we'll get those bad guys. And there seems to be a programming in almost in the human psyche, hey, yeah, I want to be on the winning team. And yeah, manhunt, that sounds really fun. Let's all get this guy. Or get this 90-year-old woman, or get this little kid, or whatever
That's it.
the target is. There's no critical thinking going on. There's
no
morality.
No, and that kind of keys into what you said earlier about the satanizing of society, because it is extremely satanic. And even if you don't believe in a creature called Satan, even the concept of the metaphor of Satan, just being a sort of a center for evil and death and destruction, can click into play, because what people are doing is, through these means, they are accepting contracts or taking money to sit in their apartments and direct these microwave weapons through the walls at their neighbors. It could be an elderly person and a retired person watching his or her favorite baseball game on TV. But meanwhile, their knees are being destroyed by Mr. Microwave weapon wielder next door.
It's phenomenal. It's unbelievable. I mean, if someone had told me 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago even, that this was even possible, I was living my life as a professor, doing the things that I needed to do in that position. And all of this stuff was off my radar. I knew, of course, about government corruption, 9/11, the phony global warming fraud, et cetera. And I was working on those things. But all of this other stuff is, there's been a lot of planning going into this. And there's another reason why perhaps you can start to think maybe Satan is real, because we might be dealing with satanic technologies here and a satanic plan, which then, you've got a pyramid, and and people are serving their master, and this is very, very dark, and
yes, and actually all of that stuff, the satanic ritual abuse, the child sacrifice, all of that is intended by these Luciferians to be a kind of calling down of their god, Lucifer, into the world, a kind of a taking of power into the dark realm and paying obeisance to that power, the dark powers.
I've heard it said
utterly sickening, utterly horrifying,
it's
revolting.
horrifying. It's revolting, and people can't get their mind wrapped around it for that reason. But if you start to read, this got a long history, at least 5,000 years. And, one
That's
Christian,
very true. There's always been lunatics all through time doing this.
They're very organized lunatics, and they are worshiping this creature. And, they're minions of that creature. And one Christian counselor mentioned to me, well, the Masons get the blood and the Illuminati gets the torture, or whatever. In other words, they feed off these energies, they feed off the world wars, they feed off the torture. The story is that the videos were real time of Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay were pumped right into the White House, so that George W. Bush, who is Skull and Bones, Satanic Secret Society, and Dick Cheney could watch them. So there, again, that's what Mark Rich was saying, that you have this psychopathic elite that enjoys the pain and suffering and they get energy from it. And, the word Holocaust means burnt offering.
That's right. Yeah.
And who is it a burnt offering to? So let's say we take 66 million white Christians in Russia and kill them between 1917 and 1989. Well, that's a burnt offering to Lucifer, and so there is this certainly, whether you believe in Satan or not, there are many satanic cults who worship Satan.
Yes.
There's no question about that.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
they
Yeah,
think
these
they're,
people worship Satan. Yeah, I was just sort of addressing my remark to those people who
oh,
may
sure.
not believe in Satan, but there
Yeah,
are
you know
people who
what?
believe in Satan, and we have ample evidence of it. Yeah.
But and so we go back to Rauni Kilde's quote, and again, this lady was killed after 30 years, murdered by gang stalking. And she was the chief medical officer in Finland for many years, and medical degrees all over the place, and a political insider because her husband was Norway's ambassador to the UN. She writes in her book Black Shadows, Bright Light on Black Shadows. She sums it up, I think. The elite have plans to get rid of 2/3 of the world population with electromagnetic warfare, chemical warfare, and psychological warfare, is what we've been talking about. Mind control, MK, is listed as a non-lethal weapon by the military. In 2002, the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research, UNIDIR, in Geneva, Switzerland, designated mind control as a weapon of mass destruction, along with nuclear bombs. This technology links the brains of people via implanted microchips. Now they got nanotech that'll do that. To satellites controlled by ground-based supercomputers. Okay, there's the system in a nutshell. All the US military branches are involved in the development of the technology in cooperation with civil institutions like the Department of Health and what is known as the Neural Network Association. At their 1991 conference, it was revealed they had submitted and endorsed over 1,000 projects in brain-computer technology at 350 medical centers, universities, etc. Well, that's 1991. Here we are, 2018. Must be over 1,000 medical
Absolutely. That's
universities.
absolutely amazing.
She says the best way to control people without their knowledge is through mind control. And there may be a lot of perps are under mind control, more than we can possibly even understand. According to the CIA director in 1972, mind control means a world where every thought, emotion, observation, and need is controlled. Cybernetics, full neurological control and communication, has been in use since the 40s without the knowledge of the public. Gee, you think if the United States citizenry owns the government, they might start trying to defund some of these projects. And she says, the objectives are behavior modification and influencing mental and bodily functions, processes, and emotions remotely through computer satellite links. Directed energy weapons, mostly EMF, electromagnetic frequency, and acoustic weapons act on the psyche and the body of human beings and all living creatures. They have been called by many names: psychophysical weapons, weapons of information warfare, psychotronic weapons, cognitive weapons, neurological weapons, mind-invasive weapons, mind control and electronic harassment weapons, remote neural monitoring, active denial systems, weapons of electronic warfare, means of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, means for behavior modification, means of influence technology, computerized brainwashing machines, devices to zombify people, means to induce mental and physical illness, means for hostile surveillance, people zappers, and weapons of mass destruction. And the Swedish Military Research, FOI, declares in their report of activities that their goal is to direct the cognitive functions of people for a lifetime. Okay, there's the Truman Show, right? So
It is. And in fact, they're doing it because everything that Dr. Rauni Kilde is talking about, and she's the one who said we are all targeted individuals now. So, because these weapons are actually being used in all of us. For one thing, the implants that she's talking about, the fact that we are already victims of cybernetics, where each one of us already nano implanted, whether you know it or not, with nanotechnology from the aerosols. That's one aspect. But the other aspect is microimplants. Many people are indeed being microimplanted. And I spoke yesterday to Greta Fahey, who is an activist from Ireland who's been targeted for many years. And she spoke extensively about this aspect, microimplants. And the video will be up shortly in the next couple of days. But she spoke about how their microimplants are now showing up in syringes, in vaccines, for instance, in flu shots, but they are being done without the knowledge of the doctor or the physician administering the shot or the nurse administering the shot. So we're tracing this back to the pharmaceutical industry, the pharmaceutical companies. And that's connected to that whole satanic New World Order agenda that's behind and overarching. You see, the medical profession. So the medical profession themselves, they've become pawns.
Yeah. I mean, is Dr. Rauni Kilde crazy? No, I don't think so. Here's a lady, functioning at the highest levels of intellectual capacity, and in terms of her professional accomplishments and her academic accomplishments. She just lays it out here. She says on July 21st, 1994, the U.S. Department of Defense, DOD, proposed that non-lethal weapons be used against anyone engaged in activities that DOD opposed. In other words, anybody that DOD didn't like, goes into the list, the terrorist watch list, whatever. That could include almost anyone. DOD's potential enemies may be countercultural individuals, those with opposing political viewpoints, economic competitors, biological undesirables, old people, veterans who know how to use guns, any group you can think of.
That's what's going on, which really makes this, makes what the space that we are living in a kind of a military dictatorship. We're not living in a democracy at all. This is highly treasonous behavior. How can the military turn against the citizenry and implant the citizenry and assault people with EMF weapons and try to modify their brains because they simply didn't like their critical thinking or their ability to speak or whatever, So, it's horrific. And I'm actually happy or reassured when I see people like Robert David Steele actually publicly speaking out about this now. So my hope is perhaps that this will be publicly addressed and publicly dealt with. Is this power, this incredible power that these guys have, that the military has currently and the intelligence agencies have currently with the use of these weapons and everybody, is this power going to be stripped from them? Does it not need to be stripped from them in order for us to live in any semblance of a democracy?
Absolute power corrupts absolutely, said Lord Acton. And this is obviously what has happened with the military and the intelligence, and they are the executors of the people above them, the CFR and the roundtable groups, and then the global mafia.
Exactly, the ones who hide behind the military and the intelligence, but who are kind of pulling the strings from way up above.
Yeah. So again, I'll go with Rauni Kilde, who really is, a tremendous freedom fighter, one of the greatest heroes, I think, in human history. That doesn't mean I agree with everything she said.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
You have to redefine this and say she is a freedom fighter. She's fighting for humanity.
Yeah, hers is a primary voice in the struggle, that totally her words need to be brought to the forefront over and over again. And also, by the way, along with her, Gloria Naylor, who wrote the book 1996 and revealed to the world what was going on, and how the NSA was involved way back in time. And of course, her testimony was not recognized by mainstream media. I think they did review her book, but they acted like that it was all fiction, and they acted like it could not possibly have anything to do with reality.
If there is a silver lining here, we see that people like Gloria Naylor and Rauni Kilde, I mean, these are magnificent human beings in terms of what they could accomplish mentally, and their tenacity, their determination against, the worst, most hideous kinds of torture.
Absolutely. They are heroes. They are the true, world heroes over here.
They are Gloria Naylor and Rauni Kilde. I can't think of anybody. And I put you in the same category, Ramola, and I hope.
That's really huge. Cool. Thank you, Eric.
This is amazing what we're up against. Most people have no clue. But here's what Rauni Kilde says. She says, from my point of view, the uses of this new technology philosophically are comparable to and amount to the biblical fall of man, the eviction from paradise. The all-encompassing thought reading and mind-influencing capacity of this technology divides man into two encampments, those few godlike people who are allowed to use these means, and all others whose freedom and free will is being taken away. And then she talks about how these serial killers and shooters, they are victims probably, and they've been programmed to be emotionless robots using these technologies, and are basically following orders to kill. So this is one way that the ruling elite can terrorize society.
That's correct.
Yeah, so use this technology. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the word they're following orders to kill, because actually when you look at it, when you look at what's really going on, and both you and I have heard from so many people who are targeted around this country and indeed around the world, we know the depths of destruction of this program. These are not just surveillance programs. They're not just control programs in society. They are killing programs. They are targeted killing programs. And this is what brings up and, echoes with the targeted killing that the NDAA was permitting, the indefinite detention of Americans on American soil, or the actual targeted killing program, where the all of these regulations and executive orders that the military and that the governmental substructure has put out and granted itself latitude through. Basically, all of these so-called laws, they seem highly illegal to me. These so-called laws are permitting them to isolate and target anybody they like, target that person for extermination, but not using those terms, not using the word killing or extermination, but putting these people in weapons testing programs, which are essentially terminal weapons testing programs, and neuroexperimentation programs or AI experimentation programs, which are essentially terminal experimentation programs. And these are the horror stories that are coming out now from the populace, of people who've been thrown into these programs and who are experiencing the incredibly horrific assault of these weapons on their brains and on their bodies, to the extent that they are experiencing robotization, which is computerized takeover of their bodies.
And minds.
And brains and minds, yeah.
Phenomenal. I mean, this is the nightmare horror movie of all time, and yet it's being played out. And it's almost like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Okay, we have these people or these beings from a foreign galaxy or something come down and manage to possess the mind and the body of normal people, and all of a sudden, those people are no longer who they were. They are now something. Well, this goes right back to the 1953 remit of the MK Ultra program. We want to find ways to get other people to do our bidding, even if it's against their sense of self-interest and self-preservation. In other words,
against their morality or ethics or principles or anything. We want to take them over despite whatever laws they live by.
And they were doing terminal experiments right and left. This is the story of Frank Olson, who was the chemist.
Well, that's the truth. And that's the satanic experimenting or the satanizing of science that's been going on in the intelligence agencies with MK Ultra.
It's okay, they felt, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, Dr. Jolyon West, Ewan Cameron, down the list, Morse Allen. I mean, we need to put these names out there.
We need to put the names out. I was thinking the very same thing. Yeah, we need to put the names
in a list. They were the ones that have these safe houses all over the place and are getting these children, 6-year-old, 4-year-old, 2-year-old, often girls, because they enjoyed raping these kids, and working with them and using every kind of torture, mind control techniques, electroshock, sleep deprivation. You go through the list. There's so many testimonies now to this effect of people who've recovered these memories and now, testified in presidential hearings in the 90s and in various books. So this is not fantasy. And what's going on now is a direct continuation of this. In other words, we are going to beat the human being into submission to our will. Well,
absolutely. Complete takeover.
This is the ultimate abuse of power. And these are the people that are the ultimate enemy of humankind. Okay, maybe Robert David Steele is different. I question that. He might be doing a limited hangout, because they have so many tricks,
Well, yes, yeah. But on the other hand, we need somebody to make a change. So when I look at this whole panorama of intelligence agency, whistleblowers and so forth, I mean, there are good guys, right, who entered those agencies thinking that they were just going to help the country. And because of compartmentalizing, they never knew throughout their careers. I mean, look at Karen Stewart. She had no idea about any of these weapons, and she worked in advanced weaponry.
We can go down the list. We can look at John Stockwell Rockwell in his books. He was a whistleblower back when you could. See, it's against the law now. But he's the last highest level CIA guy to go public and say what they're really doing. Philip Agee did the same thing in the previous decade. So yeah, we get a few, smattering of people like Bill Cooper, people like Robert David Steele now, but it's certainly not enough. We need some courage.
We need courage. Yes, we need to do a call out to the intel agency employees actually right now and just say, think about humanity, think about America. If you are American, think about America, think about your own community, your own neighborhood, because you have no idea about the horrors of the technology that is currently being used on people and that they intend to keep using on people. So if people do not step forward today and make a change, that technology will continue to be rolled out and humanity will, this is the end of humanity, if you ask me. This is the end of the sovereignty of humanity, where every individual human being can speak independently of his or her own, can think independently of his or her own, because this technology is attempting to take over your thinking and it's attempting to take over your speaking and your behaving in society, your being, your personality. They are literally moving us towards cyborgization and robotization. And it's very close. It is, in fact, here because you're able to do it to people who are speaking out. Those who are being witnessed, standing witness to biorobotizing, and I've spoken with several, they are telling you that there is nothing they can do when their arms are taken over or their legs are taken over. This is classic Manchurian candidacy. This is how people can be. If you cannot control your arm, you can pick up a knife and you can go after somebody and you can watch yourself doing it and have no control. That is the end of humanity. So, when you have no control over your own body, that's absurd that you would have no control over your own body. So for that reason, this is the moment. In fact, it's well past the moment that we need some action. We need people from inside the intel agencies who know about these dark technologies to start speaking out. And in fact, I am ready at any time to interview any whistleblower. Please come to my channel, come to do a print interview with me, stay anonymous if you like, or do a podcast. Come on our show here, Global Gestapo, and speak out openly. That would be fabulous if you wish. Anything, you can contact me. I'll have my email address below this video. Feel free to contact me at any time. And also, I'll be happy to put you in touch with Dr. Carlstorm as well. We need people standing up for humanity. We need people standing up for America and for Americans.
Yeah, and we can go, I'll just make one quick paragraph. Dr. Rauni Kilde is saying, what she's saying is reinforcing this. She says the secret services and their sabotage and terror departments are the biggest terrorists in the world and work together with the mafia. That was the case even in World War II, as has been published decades ago. More crimes against humanity have been committed under the shield of national security than the people can ever know, possibly even more than the mafia. To label non-consensual human experimentees, the victims of mind control, as paranoid schizophrenic is a crime against humanity. So yeah, if people get educated, if we'll get some high-level intelligence people to come forward and talk, this is what we need. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is probably, constrained and confined in his role.
Yeah.
To where he gets to say this, he gets to say that. He doesn't get to say that. Almost he's also a victim.
They are very controlled. It seems to me people in Congress and the president, those really high-profile public figures, they are extremely controlled because none of them openly goes after the subject, which really tells you. And, you can actually see, if you watch some of these congressional hearings, you will see each one of these senators, when they're speaking in these little roundtable conferences and so forth, these Senate hearings and so forth, you'll see somebody sitting behind them with a little gadget or a cell phone. I have seen this. And so we know at this point in time, you can send energy through a cell phone. You can send pulsed energy, pulsed microwaves to affect somebody's brain.
Voice to skull.
Or voice to skull, exactly. And in fact, as our friend Philip Walker has testified, that according to his testimony, there is a cybernetic secret electronic telepathy network And a lot of people are in on it. Now, I don't know if he says that politicians are on it, but he does say that they're the top level people in militaries, intel agencies, etc., are in on it. Well, and this is certainly what TIs are testifying to, that synthetic telepathy and voice to skull are both technologies that are being used on some of them. So it's entirely possible that there is a network connecting a lot of people in the public domain. In fact, just 2 days ago, there was an article in the I forget in which science direct or somewhere. It's basic science news that researchers have linked 3 brains together. So in other words, telepathy between 3 brains is now possible. If it's possible between 3 brains, why are brain-computer interfaces? It would certainly be possible between, 100 brains, and that's the hive minding that we've kind of talked about a little bit before. And perhaps we should cover a little bit further next time, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's, of course, if you're in a hive mind, I mean, we're speculating because this is very advanced research, but that would remove your individuality, wouldn't it? You then
Oh, absolutely.
And if we recall, the guy who founded the Illuminati, Bavarian Illuminati in 1776, Adam Weishaupt, who was a professor of canon law at Ingolstadt University in Bavaria, who was Jewish born, raised Jesuit, and then became a Satanist. He put together the program to take over the world for the Illuminati. Another name for the Illuminati is the Order of Death. And of course, Skull and Bones is an American chapter of that.
Oh, so I didn't know that.
It's the order of death. He wanted to call it the Order of Bees. He wanted to call it the Order of Bees. Okay, there's the hive mind. So this is the satanic template. We want Satan, the queen bee or whatever, to have control of all the little bees out there, I mean, that's what they've been shooting for. And apparently technologically, this is within their grasp now. So that all the hive then would be controlled by the queen bee, who's Lucifer. So I say, no, thank you. Get out of my world. Lock these people up. Give them whatever torture they've been administering to others or whatever, the guillotine, whatever. I mean, these people are the greatest enemies of humanity of all time. And I'm talking now about psychologists and military people and intelligence people who've been advancing this. We have to throw the names out, I know the names pretty well in the mind control field. But of course, there's many more. And there's probably thousands now of psychology departments and neuroscience departments, cognitive science departments that are working on these programs, again, because they put this almighty God of science there, and they, whatever, there's money, I can make money, of course, I'm going to need test subjects, like Giordano says, we're going to need some targets, and there's going to be some morbidity and mortality because this is a race, you see. He said that directly in his lecture to Lawrence Livermore Lab in 2017, which I have transcribed. So these people like Giordano and Ewan Cameron, these are the greatest monsters in history as far as I'm concerned, because what they're doing is, as you say, setting up the conditions for the complete overthrow of free will and humanity. And if you take a religious perspective, God's creation. They want to take it over for Satan. Whether or not they have that directly, that concept in their mind, or whether they're just being pawns used in a larger game, hard to say. But we, the people, need to put the boundaries around this and say, okay, this is not acceptable way for our taxpayer dollars. It should not be going to this kind of research, and the people that are doing it should be locked up and considered criminals. And if there's a president that's doing a direct live feed from Abu Ghraib, in which you have young Iraqi children screaming from being raped by American servicemen, this is a crime against humanity too. And that president, George W. Bush, and that vice president should be minimum locked up.
Oh, absolutely. Any president involved in these crimes, I mean, the whole 9/11 crime, any president associated with that crime, should not be permitted to live a free life in our society.
Yeah, so we've turned everything upside down. The criminals are walking free, and
yeah, absolutely. So in any case, we probably have to wrap this up for today, Eric. I think we've covered a great deal, and no doubt we'll come back and we will cover more in our next presentation on these subjects, and we'll talk perhaps the ways in which we can begin to make inroads into informing our neighbors, perhaps through flyering and so forth. And, we can put up some flyers on our websites and offer them to people. To just start informing people, educating people, and getting people to see that it's literally you and me individually, with our conscience and with our conscientiousness, to stand up, make a stand, and start making a change in this world.
Excellent. Excellent. That's a good idea. I'm for that.
All right. Wonderful.
Thank you so
well,
much.
thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Eric. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.